Really have two means of intervention that you can pull at any time, which is how much you do and how well you do it. And so I've dictated this, or I've kind of come up with the term of volume and efficiency. And so if you're at the gym and you're doing 20 sets, but if you're only doing like a tenth of the weight that you really could, you're not going to get the same amount of output than if you were doing the most amount of weight that you could. And so there's kind of the sweet spot of like how much volume you can do while maintaining efficiency, because there's also a thing where people do too much volume and then they get too tired and they can't repeat it. And so we want to kind of try to find the sweet spot of, not what you can necessarily maintain for the next 5 years, but what you can really maintain for the next like season that you're in. And so sometimes you'll be in a season in your business where it's like you just got to go all in, super focused, super dialed in. And that's where you have to really optimize for both volume and efficiency. The other times in which like you can kind of pull back, things are a little bit more even keel, you're kind of coasting at like 10, 15 grand a month, like you've hit your income goal and things are just good. You're in like this position of stability. That's where you can really dial back the volume and really focus on the efficiency. I'm going to explain the exact ways that I've coached entrepreneurs, business owners, high performers, closers, etc., to get the most amount of their day in terms of productivity, energy. And I just stick to like the true things that I know work in order to optimize volume. So the core principle of this video is going to be how to get more out of the things that you already do, and then how to do more things. So the thing that we're going to focus on first is how to do the most amount of reps. The reason why is because the number one way that you get better at something is by just simply doing it. And you will get enough feedback from the environment, and you will get enough feedback from knowing what's right, what's wrong, just by doing it. And so like if you were to call 10 prospects and make 10 cold calls, you would learn what cold calling is like. And you would be able to improve your skill from those 10 way more than if you were to like read a book on cold calling. So repetition is ultimately the mother of skill. What you really want to be thinking about is how you can get the most amount of reps done with the least amount of energy expended. The core principle for getting things done is how much energy that you have in order to do it, and then also the words that you use to describe the situation. This is going to impact your ability to do volume, because the hardest volume to accumulate is the first rep. And then after you do the first rep, it's about multiplication of that one thing. And the real question is like, how do I do 100? And if you just make your baseline 100, then you are well on your way to accomplishing your business goals. Said another way, you're 100 times closer than the person who does 1. So the person who does 100 in a day gets 100 times more done than the person who does 1 in a day. I say obvious things, but they're important. There's a few core pieces of this that are key when it comes to optimizing how much volume you do, which is number one, making sure that you're taking an inventory of which reps were done correctly, or at least an improvement of the rep prior, which is how to get good at something, which is efficiency. And so we'll circle back to that one in the next module. The other thing is just sheer volume builds confidence. And so a lot of people will come on coaching calls and they'll say, I have imposter syndrome for making cold calls because I don't think I'm good enough. And then my response will be, how many cold calls have you made? And they will say 0. I'd be like, I don't think you're good either. And that's okay, because nobody who does nothing is good at anything. So if you would like to get good at something, accept the fact that the first thing that needs to happen is you do the thing. So taking the 0 to 1 approach and getting through the obstacle that you may have in doing the first thing, once you solve for that, then it's a multiplication of how many times can you do that. The first rep is always going to be the hardest. And from there, what occurs is after the first one's complete, you have more confidence, because what you realize is nothing tragic happened. The world still turns and mustard still tastes the same after you have done 1 repetition. And believe it or not, the world will still turn and mustard will still taste the same after you do 10,000 repetitions. And so whatever volume you're putting off, whether it's like outreach, posting, branding, running ads, etc., or meetings or quality of work, whatever, the number one way to overcome that is with volume. And I know that I kind of frame this as like the solution to your problem is the problem. Totally. I use cold calling as an example because people find it very punishing. If you pick up the phone and you make 10 cold calls and all 10 cold calls sound the exact same, and each cold call you started with hello, hi, can I speak to the business? If you start every cold call with that and every single person hangs up to you, then you've realized that you now have 10 data points of what not to do on a cold call, which gives you a closer approximation to what a cold call should sound like. It's like, okay, well, if I sound like I'm asleep when I say hello to people, what if I tried sounding more awake? Well, that seems like a good first step. The feedback that you get from the environment, you will then give feedback as to what you can do better next time. In terms of optimizing your actual volume, one thing that will need to occur is ensuring that you're doing a sufficient amount of volume. So I love to tell this story because humans have no awareness of what they do. And when I say humans, I include myself. So there was a group of 30 people, maybe it was 20. What they were asked to do is they were asked to write down everything that they ate in a day. And they did that for 3 days. And then the people who were running the study gave them a meal plan following everything that they just said that they wrote down. And they had them follow that meal plan for 6 weeks, and 100% of people lost weight. And so we wrote, the people in that study wrote down what they thought that they were eating, and they thought they were tracking it accurately. Then they received a meal plan, guided and structured, doing the exact things that they just wrote down, and 100% of them lost weight. And so we get to this position of stories that we tell ourselves that we are doing enough or we're doing the right things. And this is where a time log or like an analysis of your day can become very, very useful. So one thing that I highly recommend to new business owners is because it feels like there's a lot of things that you can or should be doing or that like have to get done, is that you can take an inventory of your time. And so every 30 minutes, you can just write down what you just spent the past 30 minutes doing. Doing anything other than trying to get a paying client, then it means that you need to reevaluate what you were doing and ultimately just try to get a paying client. And so you can then just look at the cold hard facts of like, if you have a week's worth of data and you would have, call it 30 minutes, so 30-minute time slots, 8 hours a day. So that would be 16 a day, 5 days a week. So 80 data points. How many of those 80 data points were you spent actively trying to get somebody to give you money for services that you can provide them? And if the answer is anything less than like 60, then you have to reevaluate, well, what are the things that are stopping you from getting there? And that could be that you were 1, tired, 2, that other people got in the way, or 3, that your circumstances were not allowing you to do so. Like if you don't have the energy or you tell yourself the story, if you don't have the ability to do it, then we have to solve for that. So here's what this looks like, is you would look at your time block and you would go, okay, well, why did I just spend 30 minutes scrolling Facebook? Okay, well, is it a me problem? Did somebody call me and tell me to check out Facebook? Or did I just have Facebook open on my browser? And so then, usually it's the third one. So then you can install something like a newsfeed blocker or like a child lock on Facebook to prevent yourself from using Facebook in that situation again. Another example is if you look at your past 30 minutes and it was like went for a walk with a friend. It was like, well, did that friend know that I needed to spend that time doing cold calls? If they just walked up to my house and interrupted me during my workday, did I actually communicate to them that the time that I need to be spending in this hour is ultimately to be trying to get a paying client? And so was the issue them or was the issue me? And if the issue was that somebody else bothered you and you set the clear expectations and they're not doing the thing, then you just have to once again re-communicate what is going on. Then the last thing is like either you didn't give yourself a clear enough instruction, you communicated some sort of distorted reality that it's going to go horrible, tragic, awful, you're not good enough, you're bad at this, whatever. That's where we would reassess the stories that you're telling yourself and ultimately the distortions that you believe to be true about the situation or in which you're behaving that the case that they are true. Then you can analyze that story using the distortion framework and you can overcome that specifically. Now, if you're tired, you didn't get enough sleep, that's a whole different thing, but that's a pretty easy fix. That's just get to bed on time a little bit earlier tonight so that you can do it again tomorrow. The point that I get at, though, is like if you take your inventory and you assess, okay, if my goal is of these 80 data points, I want to be spending 60 of them trying to get somebody to pay me money. Well, I only did 20. Then you can analyze each one as to what was the thing that got in the way. Was it the circumstances were not conducive to you working? Was it that somebody else gave you a distraction that got in your way? Or was it something that you were telling yourself or you didn't have enough energy in order to accomplish the task provided? So time blocking, the key definition of it is like just making an agreement with yourself and giving yourself an instruction at this time you will do these things. Now, if you were to pull up my calendar, if I can do that for a moment. So if we look at we'll just look at my day yesterday. We'll look at all the things that I do in terms of time blocking. Okay, so if we look at my calendar, each block of time is very, very clear. And so I have review calls, do data reports, etc. Then I got my workout, I got deep work, and then I got prep, I got a meeting, I got film videos, do another meeting, film this, have another meeting, do a one-on-one, do another meeting, another coaching call, go for a walk, because that's a lot of work that I just did, and then have another meeting, finish up with a marketing call, do another one-on-one, and then I probably just laid on the floor at this point, and then had another one-on-one, and then I went to dinner. And then when I got back home from dinner, I read and I did yoga. And so I have a clear agreement with myself as to what I do at each time. And the way that I structure this is I just really think about the priorities that I have. So what we attempt to do right now is we're trying to go from 0 to 5 clients, or 5 to 20 clients, or 0 to 20 clients, basically. And so I like to think about time as like there's 3 buckets of it. There's money now, there's money later, and there's money maintenance. And so a lot of new entrepreneurs, what they come in and they start doing is they only focus their time on money later, which is building out like marketing and building out a dashboard in the CRM and like a bunch of things that don't make you money now. Then like if somebody were to buy your product, it would look very nice, but they're not ultimately things that are getting you money in the door. And so like when I first launched the first cohort of this, I just ran things on like Google Documents, a Telegram chat, which is free. And then I just ran free Zoom calls. And so like there wasn't anything set up, honestly. It was just me, a camera, and a phone. And what the great part about that is I was still able to deliver exceptional results, but all of my time was focused on making money now. And once people were in the program, I was able to shift my time to money maintenance. And now I'm really focused on money later, which is like building a business. But I solve for money now things first, which is like I had to get customers to give me money before I did anything else. And so the primary thing, once again, is that like if you look at your week, and I just love this of like if you have 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that gives you 80 call slot or 80 time spots. Of those 80, if you're not spending 60 of them trying to get somebody to give you money, then it's not even it's just like do it. Like solve for the problem that is getting in the way from you hitting those 60 time slots of 30 hours a week. Said another way, 30 hours a week in which you are trying to actively tell strangers that you exist and you can solve their problems. And if you're not doing that, then if you're not telling people that you know, or if you're not telling people that you don't know that you exist and you can solve their problems and here's exactly what you offer, there shouldn't be an and. It's just like, if you're not doing it, then do it. And the way that you do it is you solve the constraint that is in there. And so if the constraint is you, then great, solve it. If the constraint is somebody else, then great, solve it. If the constraint is your circumstances, then great, solve it. Okay, so it turns out time blocking is just me yelling at the camera, which great, also valuable. So a time blocking worksheet looks very simple. And all it is, is after every 30 minutes, you just fill out what it is that you just spent your time doing. So from 6 to 6:30, you could easily just say, I'll just start it. I'll just say, prepped for day. And then did outreach. And then paused, ate a snack, browsed, internet. Okay, well, we have a problem. Like, what was the cause of that? Because I only did outreach for 30 minutes. What stopped me from doing it for the rest of the day? Or for that matter, like the rest of the time that I have on this planet, basically, is the question that we ask. And so in asking that question, it gives us a clear problem to solve. But the thing is, unless we accept the fact by looking at the data that we have a problem, then we will never solve the problem. So the benefit of actually taking into account or accounting for the amount of time that you have holds you accountable to the things that you said that you want. Literally counting how much work you're doing in a day will hold you accountable to your goal. Just by counting. Just freaking count what you do so that you can do more of the things that make you money. I love you. You can slice this no matter how you want, but like if you do 100 of something is way different than you do 100 of it perfectly. And so one of my old bosses, he gave me a really good quote. He was a CrossFit coach. And so he said that, because there was always this like, practice makes perfect. He said, no, practice makes permanent. And so if you practice the thing incorrectly, you will train a permanent movement pattern that is incorrect. And so the key is to do the thing correctly so that you increase the chances of you maintaining correctness. And so with each repetition that you do, if you can get feedback on each repetition, meaning like if you were told that your elbows are here and they should be here, well, with each repetition that you do, if you really focus on having the elbows in like that millimeter perfect position, eventually you will have as close as anatomically correct of your body can do a perfect movement. And so I take that same type of framework and, in studying, like I was trying to become a fast exerciser. And then I tried to become a weightlifter. And in doing so, one thing that was core to my growth was being able to assess my movements. And so what I would do is I would record myself doing exercises. I would take the recordings of those exercises. I would place it right beside like Olympic athletes. And I would be like, okay, well, what am I doing? What are they doing? And then how close am I to what are they doing? And so I had the standard that I was giving myself a measurement towards. And so years later, like 3 years after that, I really wanted to get better at coaching, at like sales coaching and business coaching. So rather than movement coaching and improving my own movement, I really wanted to get better at a different skill. So I was at a conference, and one of the speakers he was the coach for Kobe Bryant. He like coached him on his mindset. He had this whole identity thing. He taught him like the Black Mamba identity basically. And he has a large 8-figure business, very nice guy, also Canadian, minor detail, kind of important. And I once again had the privilege of like hanging back and asking him a couple questions. I remember I asked him, I was like, so you now have a multi-8-figure coaching company. You have coached all these professional athletes. Like, what would you say is like the number one lever that you have pulled in order to get better as a coach? And without hesitation, he looked at me and just goes, game tape. I was like, wow, what do you mean? He was like, I just watch myself doing coaching calls. I was like, what? I record every single coaching call, and every morning I spend 30 minutes reviewing the previous day's calls to see what I missed and anything that I could have improved. I was like, holy crap. And so he knows in reviewing game tape exactly what to do and what to assess so that he can improve better for next time. Now, a lot of us won't have that like luxury of self-assessment in terms of like, oh, this is what I can do better. It's what you really need when you're trying to go from like 0 to 1 or 0 to 5. You really need like some sort of standard. And so that was the entire purpose of like why I gave you rubrics in addition to the scripts, is so that you can have a clear standard of like, okay, well, I do this script and here's the standard that I need to accomplish. How far away am I from that? And because it's really easy to give a self-assessment to what you can do better based off of a standard rather than what you can do better based off of your best guess. And so if I'm to look at like a violinist, for example, somebody trying to learn the violin, I would have no idea what feedback to give them. But if I had a violinist and I had a standard and a set of instructions for them to follow, and then a practical application of what it looks like when they follow it, then I can give them coaching and I can instruct them based off of the standard how to do better. Rather than I'm a violin teacher, I just have a standard that I can hold somebody to and help them work towards. And so this is kind of where it comes from. Like, you can coach anybody anything if you have a clear enough standard. And if that's true, I can coach myself to do anything as long as I have a clear enough standard. And so that's the entire purpose of you guys having all these standards of like exactly what a rubric looks like. So the key point here is, so when you are practicing, you're not practicing the same mistakes and reinforcing a negative pattern. It's because if you were to do a call, like a 1-hour call, and then you broke down with a standard of exactly how you could have done that call better, well, then the next time you do that call, your behavior changes, therefore you have learned. And so if we define learning by change of behavior, then you have effectively learned. If you have a standard, then you have the thing that you did, and then you have clear instructions of what you will do next time to be closer to the standard, and then you do that, you have learned, and therefore your skill has gotten increased. And so it's not as if you have magically figured out sales. It's you had a clear standard and you gave yourself instructions on what to do better in the future so that you could get better. This is how you can get better at literally anything. I just chose to teach you how to sell stuff. So I just told you how to make money, basically. And so building this in is realistically what you want to do, and because we know that the mother of skill is volume. You really want to do this in supplementation of the volume. And so this is not spend half of your time doing volume, spend half of your time getting better at figuring out the volume. But it's give yourself one lever or one thing that you can do or one instruction that you can follow to get better in the future. Said another way, if I'm going to go learn golf, the world's best golf instructor is not going to show me golf by teaching me everything all at once. They're going to say, hold the club, hit a couple balls. Then they're going to watch me. Then they're going to be like, okay, on the next one, bend your knees a little bit. And then they'll make sure that I bend my knees. Okay, on the next one, rotate at the hips. Okay, great. Then they'll watch me do a couple of that, make sure that I do both of those things, that I'm learning and my behavior is changing. Just like a golf instructor or somebody who's teaching you a sport does that, you want to do the same thing with yourself when it comes to improving your sales skills and techniques. That means more a self-assessment at the beginning. And then as you start to get a feel for it and you start to realize, okay, well, obviously this part of the call I'm doing well, I'm exceeding expectations. This part of the call needs improvement. And so the next time I'm going to do exactly this. I'm going to follow these instructions and then I will self-assess. Okay, great. I've nailed that. I've exceeded expectations here. Then I feel a lot better about it. And then it's just refinement of like, how much better can I get at this? And how long can I continue to be really, really good at this? Because again, it's not volume or efficiency. It's volume times efficiency. How much you do times how well you're doing it. And then like the big bracket thing is like for how long. And so if you're doing as much volume as you can, as well as you can for 10 years, you will be successful. Like if you do 100 times 100% efficiency, you talk to 100 strangers a day and you do it 100% perfectly, and you do that for 10 years, you will have more money. You will have enough money to question the meaning of life. So that's been the training today. If you have any questions, reach out to your coach, post in the group. I'm gonna go do some breath work.